everyone, welcome back to another episode of Animation Pilgrimage, where we take a look at... Why are you giving me that face?
I'm just illustrating my face as I'm watching you.
You look concerned.
I wasn't meaning to be concerned.
Alright, well, anyway, where we take a look at every animated film that released theatrically in chronological order. I'm Tennille.
And I'm Sean. I was just exercising my eyebrows in just like kind of moving them along with the extremity of how you were speaking and stuff.
You were looking at me like, we're not doing animation pilgrimage right now. And I'm like, yes, we are. What universe have I fallen into where we aren't setting up a recording for animation pilgrimage? We're not playing a video game.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Today we watched The Enchanted Boy from the USSR.
Yep. We did.
Have you recovered from my eyebrows?
I'll never recover.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. We watched The Enchanted Boy from the USSR. Ask and thou shalt receive, huh?
Yeah. This was not just a only rotoscope film. Mm-hmm. In fact, the rotoscoping was very minimal.
Yeah.
It's like I noticed it on like one character who's in the movie for like
a minute
or two at the very end.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's like loosely rotoscoped at best.
Yeah. And thanks to that, the movie's much more enjoyable, IMO.
I would agree. It's got a higher level of cartoony, just lightheartedness.
Mm-hmm. I mean, granted, I'd like to see a marriage kind of the two styles. Mm-hmm. Because, we had some really pretty background work in some of the older films. And now the backgrounds are more simple to
coexist with these simpler character designs.
Right. And it's fine. Yet again, I'm very thankful for the change of pace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I did not look that up before our last episode.
Yeah. It was just a pure coincidence. And we both started The Enchanted Boy and we're like, oh,
that kid is a cartoon character, not just a rotoscope character.
Yeah, he even has like kind of noodly arms. I'm like, all right. Yeah. Yeah,
awesome
this is
sauce.
nice.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it wasn't last episode, but it was like 2 episodes ago.
The last time we reviewed a Russian film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But either way, this is an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
It's a combination of a few. Sort of. The story is adapted from folktale, book, Russian children's story, I'm not quite sure, of the adventure of Nils, whatever the boy's name is. Nils.
Right.
And sometimes it had an E in there.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, the translation's going to be a little foggy for us here because, as it turns out, the translation we saw was just somebody translating it.
Mm-hmm. It's not any sort of like official...
Yeah, it's never one... It is another one of these Russian films that hasn't actually ever had an English translation.
Mm-hmm. But I think the person that did the translation did a pretty good job. Yeah. If anything, I felt like I understood this story more than I did some of the previous Russian films that we had watched.
Yeah, I actually feel like I can critique this one more because I felt like I had just a better grasp of everything that was going on.
Yeah, and I don't think it necessarily had anything to do with the animation at all. It's just their storytelling prowess was better in this one.
Yeah.
Now, I guess before we get too far, do you know if this was the same animation studio that's done the last few, or if it was a different one?
I think studio is the wrong term to use when talking about Russian animation.
Okay, team or director.
A director of this movie also worked on The Snow Maiden.
Oh, okay. Wow, not the one I would expect, because The Snow Maiden, if I'm remembering correctly, was like the big musical, right?
Yeah, the one where the sun cult...
The sun cult, okay.
The sun cult wins at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah,
But this is so different from that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to, like, I have to remember that I can't just make assumptions about what a studio is and or was in Russia, and I can't make assumptions about, like, what their production pipeline looked like, or
because we just don't have a lot of information on it.
Right, because we just don't have a whole lot of information about it, other than the fact that, most of these films were just kind of funded by the government, and that's it.
Yup.
And, every once in a while we get some names of people who worked on the films that, come back or cross over, or it's like, one time they're a writer here, or they're a director here, or they're an animator here, and...
I am excited that I feel like it's obviously not completely true, but I feel like as we continue to get farther and farther in animation pilgrimage, we're getting more and more information on a lot of these films that aren't just Disney films, because of course we have all the information on the Disney films. It's Disney. They've done a very good job of their keeping track of their history. Yeah. But I feel as we keep getting farther, we're getting more of that for these other movies as well.
That being said, I've pretty much given you everything I have as far as research goes for this one.
Okay, well, it's not true for this one, but I feel in general it's kind of true. That being said, the Russian films themselves seem to be a little more difficult to get information on.
Yeah. So, a brief summary of stuff that goes on in this film. We start off with a boy Niels, who...
He's a jerk.
Yeah, he's an ornery little boy. He's not kind to the animals that live on his farm. He doesn't want to do his homework, and he ends up...
Capturing a gnome?
Capturing a leprechaun, gnome, dwarf. The translation keeps... putting in a whole bunch of different names.
But the translation is not what keeps changing. They use different terms in, like, the original German as well, because I noticed Russian. What did I say, German?
Yeah.
Oops. Russian, because I noticed whenever he specifically said gnome, he actually said, like, gnomu. And, like, he would say different terms depending on what it was. So they were actually switching out...
Okay.
When they were saying gnome or dwarf or... What else did they say?
I don't know. But, I mean, it was essentially... It's like a fae.
Yeah, it's just a tiny little leprechaun man, except not a leprechaun.
Yeah. And the boy's like, make me like you! And so it does, but it obviously is kind of playing a trick on the little boy.
So he just shrinks him.
He shrinks him, and then he's like, bye! And the leprechaun leaves, and so the boy's like, I've got to go on a journey to find the gnome. And he immediately befriends the goose, Martin.
Martin, yeah.
Who is flying away, like migrating with another flock of geese.
Yeah, he decided to leave the farm and just fly off and join a random... flock of geese that was going by.
Yeah. And then there's a whole bunch of, like, mini stories, like little adventures the boy and Martin have, where...
And the boy, like, over the course of them, becomes a good person and, like, helps save the geese multiple times and stuff like that.
I mean, becomes is a pretty strong word. It's like, the boy is an ornery little shithead in the beginning.
And then he gets strong.
And then he's like a pillar of virtue and heroics.
I would have liked it if they had curved that character.
Curved that arc a little bit.
Yeah, instead of just like a fine point.
Yeah.
Where he's a different character now.
I'm now little, so all the bad has been pushed out of me.
Oh, he's the size of how much good was in him to begin with.
Very little, so it comes off very strong.
But he, like, saves the geese from being eaten by a fox by drowning it.
Yeah.
And then
being good tends to involve a lot of animal murder.
Yeah. It's like he drowns a fox, He drowns a bunch of mice like the Pied Piper, or rats.
Rats.
Rats specifically.
Yeah. Poor rats.
He tricks a statue. I thought that section was actually really cool.
It's really interesting, yeah. And
like,
the way they animated the statues as well.
Mm-hmm. Like, they're super heavily shaded. Mm-hmm. Especially, like, the metal statue.
Yeah, and they move clunkily.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. I'm sure I'm showing some examples of the animation here. But yeah, it just really interesting choice. I like the detail. That's one thing I really want to praise about this film, is that it actually utilizes character design.
Yeah.
Character design is a thing.
Like, they're not just hyper-realistic-ish humans that all just kind of look the same. No, like, characters are exaggerated in specific points, and, like, they look different.
Yeah, the animals all kind of look different.
You can tell which goose is which.
Yeah, even if it's just a little thing like, Martin has like a little tuft of hair, fur, feathers and on top of his head.
The head of the goose
flock,
she like looks old.
Yeah.
And stuff, and it's like, that's cool. I like how you can actually tell these characters apart.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like the detail on the fisherman statue, the one made of wood, that like on his cheek he had the wood spirals.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like the rings, I guess, is what you would call that. But yeah, it's like this film actually had some character design. It just had some
interesting characters in general.
Yeah.
Like I enjoyed these characters.
I liked this. Yet again, though, like, my biggest critique would be the story and the supposed character arc this boy is supposed to be going through.
Which is still fairly non-existent. Yeah,
it's just kind of like, they set up that he's a bad kid at the beginning, and then...
He's not a bad kid anymore.
Yeah, 10 minutes in, he gets turned into a little... gnome kid, and then
he's not bad
good.
Anymore.
Yeah, and there's never any
repercussions?
There's never any repercussions for his actions. It's not like, when he turns little, the animals gang up on him and they're like, oh, now this is payback for...
But they do. The geese very briefly do.
For like a whole 10-15 seconds.
Yeah. And it wasn't even Martin.
Right. And Martin's the one he hurt.
Yeah, Martin is the one that he specifically hurt in the beginning.
Yeah. So Martin's just like, oh, sure, you want to fly with me? Get on my back. And I'm like, can we have a little bit more character dynamics here? At least, even by the middle of the movie, they do somewhat have a believable bond. There's like that whole scene with the boy being like, oh, well, did you thank the squirrel for getting these nuts? You're so rude. And the goose is like, well, no, I didn't, but why didn't you thank me? And the boy's like, whatever. And so he goes off to go help the squirrels, or to go thank the squirrels. And then Martin stays behind. He's like, stupid boy.
Just think of the squirrels and not thinking me. I'm the one that got him the nuts in the first place.
Right.
And then by the end of the thing, he hasn't been back for a while, and he's like, oh no, he's got to be dead now. Oh,
the boy's dead.
I'm terrible at this.
I'm such a horrible friend. I'm going to go out to the woods and bring his bones back. And then the little boy comes in and he's like, my bones have come back to you all by myself. I thought that was a cute line.
That was a cute line, yeah.
Yeah. And then they're like, oh, you're alive. So it's serviceable. It works. Yeah.
And at the end, he, like, saves his goose friend from being eaten.
Well, yeah, okay. So the way this film kind of wraps up is that the boy finds the leprechaun gnome again. And he's like, hey, I need to turn back into a boy. I don't want to spend the rest of my life like this. And I was like, all right, but you must do these things 3.
Do these 3 random obtuse things and you'll get big again. And he's like, control an army with a stick with 9 holes in it or something. Which was the pipe that murdered the rats. And then the second one was stay in the hat when the king bears his head or something like that. And it's like, what?
I think that one's just like...
That must be like a...
translation thing.
A translation thing or like a USSR like saying or something. It must make more sense in the original language.
Or it's supposed to just be really, really vague and hard to understand. Unsure.
But either way, the boy was inside the wooden statue's hat, and the iron statue was
bronze.
Bronze? Okay.
I think it was bronze.
Okay. The metal statue.
Yeah.
Was the king, and then he was able to not leave the other guy's hat, which meant he achieved his goal.
Yeah.
It was a very strange...
very arbitrary...
thing.
Stipulations to be turned back into a boy. Which, I mean, is kind of the point, because by the time you get to the end, the leprechaun's like, oh, I could have turned you back at any point. I just wanted to make sure you learned your lesson. But yet again, I'm not sure what staying in the fisherman's hat has to do with the boy learning any sort of lesson.
Oh, I don't know. It's just, I don't know, fun.
Sure, it's fun.
I don't know.
And then, but the leprechaun refuses to tell him what the last condition is. So the boy and Martin make it back home, and then the leprechaun's like, all right, so your final condition is that you'll become a boy again when you sit at your family table and...
with food and your best friend.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Like, sitting at the table with you. Which, I was like, what? And Sean's like, he means cook the goose. I was like, oh.
It means that he'll turn into a big person again when the goose is cooked.
Yeah.
And, of course, he's like, oh no, he's my best friend. I can't let that happen. So he saves Martin and sets him free. And the gnome is like, hey, that was actually what you need to do because you were self-sacrificing or willing to stay small to save your friend's life or whatever. And now you're big again.
Yeah.
And then we get like 30 seconds, if even that, of his parents like, oh, I'm so sad that our son is missing and gone. Boo,
it's kind
boo,
of a
boo.
weird scene.
And then the boy's like outside and he just like looks at the camera and then like knocks on the window and the end.
Yeah, the parents turn and they're like, oh! But it's just their silhouettes.
So we never even see expressions on them or anything.
Yeah. I mean, with a bit more polish and editing and stuff, it's like that could have been a nice emotional scene. But I don't know if in Russian animation they're really going for emotional scenes right now. Like that's just not really a thing.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be the point of what they're doing more often than not.
Because yet again, kind of like I was saying at the beginning of this, I have to try to not put my assumptions of film theory and any sort of like story structure and like
when you get to a lot of these foreign films from so long ago that it's like
that developed completely by themselves.
Yeah, they did not get a lot of influence from, say, America or the rest of Europe or anything like that.
Yeah. So it's just like I can't put it in that same
mold that you know.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed this one actually.
I wouldn't mind seeing a modern adaptation of this story.
Yeah.
Like I think that'd be cute.
Who knows? Maybe we'll run across another one down the way.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if it's a popular children's book, and I mean, the story's simple enough that I definitely could see anyone wanting to retell that tale, and they could do it in a completely different way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Would I recommend this one? Not really.
I'd say maybe. It's actually a change of pace from all the other different Russian films, so I think that's worth looking at.
Yeah.
And I think the animal animation's pretty good for, like...
Pretty good for what it is.
Non-Disney.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was fine. But just like outside of doing animation pilgrimage, I don't see too many people really getting into this one, you know?
That's true, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
I think that's probably it for this episode.
Yeah, so next week we have another USSR film. We have The 12 Months?
Yes, The 12 Months.
The 12 Months. So, we'll see you guys then.